one problem with the OPEC oil crisis in 1973, which caused some problems. It was further complicated by the political protests of 1976, which led to large unrest in parts of the country and general, not strike conditions, but there was disruption in production. And then finally in 1979, it was a second energy crisis that hit the world, and including Poland. And you could say that from 76, more or less, the more difficult years started. The Polish economy started underperforming. These loans that had come in, now there was repayment that was due for many of them. And Gierek tried to solve it by minimizing imports to as large of a degree as possible, finding national substitutes for most of those goods. Naturally, for some goods it was impossible. Some chocolates, for example, the chocolate confectionaries became rarer, citrus fruits and so on. So there were shortages. Coupled with that was also the introduction in 1976 of rationing cards for meat, dairy, and some other products as well, tobacco. This created a black market in which cigarettes, you could say, became a new form of unofficial currency that could be used for trading other things. So quite interesting times, which many Poles remember very well. This problem of having to wait in lines in front of stores with empty stores practically, with their rationing cards and hoping that they would find something. So the times were difficult, and in these conditions, this was also when another thing that the state tried to do, apart from limiting imports, was maximizing exports. So many of those goods that would have been needed for the internal market to fill up those shelves, they were exported in order to pay down those debts that had been taken. Also, you have a political crisis brewing. The Poles are tired of what is happening. The Polish Pope, John Paul II, had been elected in 1979. He had arrived to Poland for his first pilgrimage, and this really electrified the country. And you could say that this was an embryo that was created for future political unrest. In the coming year, in 1980, you have the establishment of a trade union, the Solidarity Movement and Solidarity Trade Union, which initially naturally was banned, as there were no independent trade unions that were allowed in the neither in the Soviet Union nor in the Soviet satellite states here in Central Eastern Europe. But after some unexpectedly large strikes and demonstrations, Gierek felt that he was under pressure, and he allowed the Solidarity Trade Union to start functioning as a legal and independent trade union, a first in the communist world. This greatly alarmed the people in the Kremlin. In Moscow, it was perceived as the start of a Polish-Hungarian revolution of 1956, or of the Prague Spring in 1968 in Czechoslovakia. So there was this burgeoning debate in the Soviet Union, what to be done about this Polish problem. In Poland, Gierek's position among the hardliners in the party continued to deteriorate. He was replaced very briefly by Stanisław Kania as the first secretary, but soon thereafter, a man of the military, General Wojciech Jaruzelski, came to power. He took that position as the first secretary of the Polish Communist Party, which technically had the name of the Polish Workers' Party, United Workers' Party. The word communism in Poland was still deemed to be a little bit too controversial to be used for the ruling party, at least. Naturally, Poland had fought a war against the Soviet Bolsheviks in 1920, and then later we had an invasion by the Soviet Union in 1939, and another one in 1944 when they were marching west toward Berlin. So the Poles were a bit sensitive to that. Nevertheless, Jaruzelski was more of a hardliner. Probably the bloodiest event was, or the bloodiest event was, the crackdown on the Wujek coal mine, during which 9 coal miners were simply shot when they were trying to resist the authorities by launching a strike deep down in their mine. Also, there was general repression from the security services. There were more and more wiretapping. There were more and more cases of these agents trying to infiltrate various groups. So in Polish society, especially within the trade union, there was a huge paranoia because anyone could technically be an informer, and if you were somehow involved in this dissident work, then you simply risked a severe jail sentence, and you would lose your job. The repercussions for your family were very poor. Also, often there was a form of collective punishment that your children would not be able to attend the university they wanted to. So people were certainly pressed into refraining from working and organizing in the Solidarity trade union. By 1982, the results were visible. Less and less people were willing to organize in the trade union.
Who would have thought that within 8 years the Berlin Wall itself would be tumbling? Extraordinary.
Yes, for many people, they thought it was a nail in the coffin for their aspirations for...
But in actual fact, it was a nail in the coffin for the communists.
Yes, yes.
But we didn't know it at the time. That's a marvellous thing, of course. With the benefit of hindsight, you see things in a different way from how they're seen at the time. But that's been marvellous. Thank you for sharing that with us. We must develop these terms in future programmes. There we are, alas, we've come to the end of another programme. It's quite an interesting canter through, I think, the course of martial law. And as I was saying, and if you come to Poland today, very different from how it must have looked in 1981, when there must have been very little hope that Poland would emerge to be the major European country it has now become. Well, it just shows that history sometimes does give you a happy ending. And alas, we have now ended. So thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Poland Daily History.